I yield myself such time as I may consume.
The gentleman is recognized.
And I also ask unanimous consent to revise and extend my remarks.
Without objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I rise today as the sponsor of H.R. 6304, the FISA Amendments Act of 2008. This bill represents the culmination of more than a year's work by the members and staff of the House Intelligence Committee, together with our colleagues on the Judiciary Committees, to bring to the floor a bill that modernizes our surveillance authorities while protecting the constitutional rights of Americans. I want to thank Chairman Conyers for his efforts to strengthen this bill. As always, I greatly appreciate my good friend's commitment to protecting our country and the principles that we hold so dear. I also want to thank the respective ranking members and all that worked so hard to bring this bill to the floor today. This bill, Madam Speaker, enjoys wide support inside the Democratic caucus. It has been endorsed by our Democratic whip, by our Democratic caucus chair, by the Blue Dog Coalition, the New Democratic Caucus, and by a number of our colleagues. For that, I want to thank in particular our Majority Leader, Mr. Hoyer, for leading the effort towards a bipartisan compromise. This bill is a far better deal than the Protect America Act, and it is far better than the Senate bill that passed earlier this year. Madam Speaker, intelligence is the first line of defense in our nation's effort to prevent terrorism and to stop the proliferation of weapons of mass destruction. This legislation strengthens the ability of our intelligence agencies to conduct lawful surveillance of foreign targets. But this legislation also serves another very important and vital function. It strengthens the constitutional rights of Americans, protects them from unlawful surveillance, and it stops this president, or any president for that matter, from invoking executive power to conduct warrantless surveillance of Americans. This bill does more than just retain the original FISA requirements for an individual warrant based upon probable cause for surveillance targeting Americans here in the United States. For the first time ever, this bill requires in statute warrants for Americans anywhere in the world. It also requires the government to establish clear guidelines to ensure that no American is the target of any surveillance without a warrant. It clarifies that FISA and Title 18 of the Criminal Code are the exclusive means by which the government may conduct domestic surveillance. It will prohibit any unlawful warrantless wiretapping, the kind that we saw under this administration. It provides accountability by requiring the inspectors general of various agencies to compile a comprehensive report on the President's surveillance program. And that review must be given to Congress. It requires prior court approval of the procedures used to conduct surveillance of foreign targets, except in an emergency, similar to the current FISA law. This legislation, Madam Speaker, also addresses the issue of lawsuits against telecommunications companies that comply with directives from our government. This bill does not grant immunity to any government official who might have violated the law. And this bill does not grant automatic immunity to telecom companies, as the Senate bill would have. Under this legislation, a federal district court will review the evidence submitted by the Attorney General and the court, and then the court will decide whether to grant civil liability protection to a company that provided post 9/11 assistance to the government. In this bill, Congress does not grant immunity. Congress isn't deciding the question of immunity. The district court will. Finally, Madam Speaker, this bill will sunset in 4.5 years, ensuring that the next administration will be in a position to assess and review the effectiveness of this legislation. This legislation represents a bipartisan compromise, and as such, both sides got less than they wanted. But it is a product of good faith effort by both Republicans and Democrats to give our intelligence agencies the tools necessary to keep America safe, while protecting our Constitution and our civil liberties. I strongly urge my colleagues to vote for this very important piece of legislation.